and most deadly infectious disease around the world. As we know, before the COVID-19 pandemic, TB caused more deadly than the HIV, and at the 2022, TB claim caused about 1.3 million deadly. This is a data from the WHO, and the WHO in 2022 estimate around 10.6 million people who caught by TB. This is increasing 0.3 million from the previous year. So we can see from year to year, people who develop the TB is increasing. This is called increasing burden of the TB. And after someone infected by the TB, if they don't get a proper treatment, 50% will die for the first year. So TB is a very very deadly infectious disease. So we want to see what's factor correlated with the increasing burden of the TB. From the literature, we see the rising burden of the TB is caused by several factors. The first one is deficiency in healthcare service delivery, the lack of the access to diagnosis and treatment services, inadequate case detection, and the last one is about today research is about the non-standardized treatment and reporting protocol. In 2022, WHO estimate nearly 30% people who are infected by the TB, there are no recorded in the healthcare system. This is we call missing cases. The missing cases comprises two big spectrum. The first one is undiagnosed TB patient who infected by the TB, but they are not seeking help from the medical doctor or healthcare professional. The second one is who are diagnosed TB by the medical doctor, but they are not reported to the healthcare system. The research today is want to study which factor influence the second one, the diagnosed TB, but they are not reported to the healthcare system. This is a very important thing, because if the TB, they are not reported to the healthcare system, the government doesn't know. If they are know exactly the burden of the TB, they cannot take a right policy to take control of the TB. The patients who are not reported to the healthcare system, they are at the risk to get unstandardized treatment. So they will cause much wider spread of the TB in the community. So this is a very much more problem for the TB burden country around the world, such as Indonesia, India, China, and also. So addressing the underreporting of the TB, particularly with the private healthcare sector, is crucial for mitigating this public health crisis for our objective study today. From the literature and from the sounds of the journal, we know that TB notification rates are influenced by various factors. The first one is patient demographic, healthcare provider characteristic, and notification system effectiveness. Today, we want to study what demographic factor from the patient can impact the TB notification. The demographic element we want to study today is about the age, gender, and living area of the patient. This is the diagram. We see with the big component which influence the notification. The first one, demographic factor, age, gender, and living area, which we study in this research. The second one is healthcare provider. The third is about the notification site system itself. This study, we use the cross-sectional design to address the research objective. The data we get from to the clinic and private practice physician. Why we study at the clinic and private healthcare? Because the private healthcare, which consists of the private healthcare doctor or the clinic, they are most contribute maybe 96% to the unreported cases in Indonesia, which is the location of this study. So we get the data from there. We get the totally 93 TB patient report from this healthcare setting, and we doing univariate and bivariate analysis using Spearman correlation tests to see which factor are correlated with the TB identification. This is the result from the univariate analysis. We see most of the patients are at the 16 and the 64 years old, and most of the patients are male, and most of the patients are living in the urban area. At the bivariate analysis, we see the patient living area correlates significant with the TB identification, but the patient age group and patient gender, they are known. So we want to see the discussion. The first one is about the AIDS. We see the AIDS in this study, there are no significant correlation, but this is contrast to many research. At Kenya, at the 2016 study in Kenya, they see the certain age group, they are correlated significant. And at the Fatima and Malik and Oliva from India, they says similarly. They say the pediatric group have significant correlation to the other notification, but in our study, contrast to our study result, there are no significant. We assume maybe just age is not enough to become the non-significant. Maybe there are any factor can influence, so maybe any confounding factor that correlate between the AIDS and the TB identification. About the gender, yeah, we can see the gender in the univariate analysis, mostly patient is the male. This is same, many studies in the world, from the Africa, from the Kenya, from the China also, they also see that mostly patient of the TB is a male, and under notification is male too. But in this study, the result is also non-significant. About the living area, the correlates significant. We can see that maybe at the urban area, because they provide more good healthcare facility, more clinic, more quality of the healthcare facility, and the person who are living at the urban area maybe at the higher socioeconomic maybe and higher literacy, so the health-seeking behavior is better than the living in the rural. So the notification rate is better at the urban area than the rural one. This is our conclusion. The TB remains a formidable global health challenge with substantial implication for the public health due to its mortality rates and persistent underreporting issue. The global burden of the TB underscores significant gaps in prevention and control effort exacerbated by deficiency in healthcare service delivery, limited access to diagnosis and treatment services, and inconsistent reporting protocol. Within context of this study, several key findings emerged regarding the patient demographic and healthcare dynamics. Despite biological vulnerability that might predispose men to higher TB prevalence, gender alone did not significantly impact reporting rates, underscoring the complex interplay of healthcare access, diagnosis practice, and reporting protocol in shaping TB surveillance outcomes. Similarly, patient age, while indicative of certain age group higher of TB frequency, did not emerge as a decisive factor in reporting disparities due to broad age range observed in this study. In summary, we see that addressing TB underreporting requires targeted intervention that enhance healthcare infrastructure to improve diagnosis capacity and standardize reporting practice across healthcare sector. Effort to mitigate socioeconomic disparities and promote equitable access to TB diagnosis and treatment services are crucial for bolstering TB surveillance and control effort in both urban and rural settings. By addressing this systemic challenge, stakeholders can advance toward achieving more accurate TB surveillance, better disease management, and ultimately reduce TB incidence and mortality rates globally. Thank you very much for giving my presentation. This is the references that I get from this study.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reti, for the presentation. And I'm open for Q&A session. Any question? No question. Okay, no question. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, I have one question to ask. Okay, you mentioned about the unreported tuberculosis, right? Yeah. So you did mention just now. Do you have the statistic on that? The unreported tuberculosis cases that you mentioned just now. Yeah. Do you have statistic? Thank you so much.
Okay, we'd like to call upon this next presenter, presenter number 5, Sudarani B. Okay, please welcome Ms. Sudarani B, and she will be presenting the effectiveness of antenatal physiotherapy exercises in enhancing diagnostic accuracy and improving patient safety during labor, a randomized control study.
Well, good afternoon and Jai Hind. Myself Dr. Sudarani B. Vasiwada. I am representing from ITM University, Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, India. My topic of this today's presentation would be on the effectiveness of the antenatal physiotherapy exercises, which helps in enhancing the diagnostic accuracy and also improving the patient safety during the labor, which was a randomized controlled trial. In alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, with the Sustainable Development Goal 3, good health, the quality education, and as well as 17 goal partnerships goals. In aligning with this, I would just like to introduce about my topic, why I have been choose this topic and regarding the introduction. If I take the case scenario of the country, India, as per the census of 2021 data, statistical data, 21.5% in the private hospitals are being the cesarean sections and 49.7% overall. So 1 in 2 deliveries are being with the cesarean sections. If I quote a Journal of Medical Internet Research, the statistics of 2021, around 2,30,870 cesarean sections were reported. And as per the Deccan Herald, around 37.95% of the cesarean sections were recorded in 2021-22, and worldwide the data was 21.1%, and in 2023 it was 32.4%. So there is an increasing in the ratio of the cesarean sections, and due to which the post complications in the mother as well as the fetus are being prevalent. Keeping this into the view, I have selected this study by intercollaborating the professionals like physiotherapy exercises also. So why physiotherapy exercises? Physiotherapy exercises because as one of our learner speaker during their speech also they said that we have to, prevention is more better than going for the treatments and all. So keeping this point into the view, being all us women people also, we can enhance ourselves, our good health through a small exercises also. Though we are having a number of the traditional medicines, or you may say the Siddha, Unani, Yoga and all. So physiotherapy is also a part wherein which we can enhance the health of the mother as well as the fetus with the help of the physiotherapy exercises. So that was the need of the study which I found due to the increasing section cases, that is the C-section cases. I chose this topic for the physiotherapy so that in the long run it would help the mother as well as the baby. The objective of the study was to determine the antenatal physiotherapy exercises and reducing its labor-related complications so that it also enhances the maternal as well as the fetal safety also. And also to explore or to assess the antenatal physiotherapy exercises in reducing the need of the medical interventions during the labor, and also to compare the patient satisfaction with the personal safety between the women who are undergoing the antenatal physiotherapy exercises. The hypothesis of my study was to the antenatal physiotherapy exercises significantly improve the fetal safety as well as the labor-related complications when compared with the standard antenatal care. So in my study design, which I used for the randomized control design was used, and the duration was 7 months from the 12th week to the labor was the time period, and the setting of the study was the IDM hospital under the guidance of Dr. Anshu, physiotherapist at the antenatal clinic. The inclusion criteria included 20 to 30 years women between the 12 to 24 weeks, and the single-term pregnancies with no any abnormalities or any high-risk pregnancies. So the groups were divided into two. Randomization was being done, 25 into the control and 25 into the experimental group, and the data was being collected. So in the data, the baseline data was being collected, the age, parity, then the gestational age, etc. was being considered, and for the maternal health, the baseline data like BP, then the BMI and the FHR will also be considered. Primarily, the data, the intervention what we gave was basically on the antenatal physiotherapy exercises, which included the pelvic floor exercises, breathing exercises, then rug walk exercises, and some of the strengthening exercises which helps in prevention of the back pain. So the back and core pelvic regions strengthening exercises were mainly focused on. The duration of the exercises was given for about 3 to 4 weeks per week, which was lasting about 30 to 45 minutes and was a maximum up to 8 to 12 weeks. And the adherence of the compliance of the same was being assessed with the experimental group. The mothers were told to maintain a diary, and whenever they used to come for the follow-up, they were being assessed by the physiotherapist. For even the randomization, when the randomization was done, the paramedics X scale was being used to assess whether are they fit or not for the experimental. In the control group, normal visits were being given, and normal standardized scale was being provided to the mother. So in the in this intervention, as I already told, adherence to the exercise was being assessed that by maintaining the diary and documenting the sessions, and this was being in-term assessed by the physiotherapist. Further, the periodic assessments was being continued to assess their muscle tone, mobility, the exercise, how much they are doing, and what is the muscle tone, again by the physiotherapist only, and regular fetal health checkups were being done to ensure the safety of the fetus also. Coming to the results section. So in the results section, it was found the mothers, that is the correlation between the active and the latent phase, that at 0.05 level, in the latent phase you see 6.56%, that is, it was very significant when controlled to the control group. The latent phase was reduced, and as well as in the active phase also it was reduced in the experimental group when compared to the control group, where again there is a significant level. When we see the correlation between the duration of the exercises in the weeks and the duration with the latent phase and the active phase, of them around more than 22 weeks were 15 and less than 22 weeks were around 10, where you can see the duration of the latent phase and the active phase was correlation between the mode of the delivery and the study as well as the control group. Around 21%, that is the 84% of the mothers had the vaginal delivery and 4% had the cesarean section, that is 64 mother, that is 16% had the cesarean section. And in control group it was 16 with the vaginal delivery and 9 with the cesarean section. When we assess the degree of the pain perception in both the groups, the mild was being more in the study group when compared to the control group, and the severity rate was a little bit higher in the control group as when compared to the study. So in conclusion, if you say that the antenatal physiotherapy exercises help the mothers in prevention of the disease as well as the death associated complications like uterine rupture of the uterus, abortion, placenta previa, thromboembolic disorders and uterine diseases. And also it reduces the long hospitalization. So some evidence is that the physiotherapy can help to reduce the level of extreme pain caused by the postural complications and even allow them for the autonomic circulations. So some of the references I have quoted here, and these are the exercises which were being given to the mothers at the visit, and this is the Swiss ball exercises during their visit, and here this is a small video. So this is not mine. So this is the exercises. We divided the exercises in different months where they can do small exercises. So this can help them to increase their muscle tone, their flexibility of the body, and also helps them for easy delivery, so that the upcoming complications for the mother and the fetal can be prevented. So I rest my presentation here and open to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Radha, for a very interesting topic. So we open to the floor for any question. Okay, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Sudha. I find your study very interesting. Just want to know, how did you choose the respondents? Since you have mentioned a while ago that you have chosen your respondents randomly, those belong to the control group and the experimental group. So I just want to elaborate more, on how did you choose those respondents belonging to the experimental group and those respondents belonging to the control group.
Can you come back? I am not clear.
No. My question is, how did you choose your respondents belonging, since you mentioned a while ago that randomization, okay, belonging to the control group and those respondents belonging to the experimental
As I have been clearly
group.
told that paramedic X guidelines were used. So for assessing this particular guidelines, which finds whether the antenatal mother is having all the normal parameters or not, like singleton pregnancy, no any high risk associated, okay, then her HB levels are good, even her consent is also a matter in this one. So these all were considered, and after consideration, collection of the 50 mothers were done, and then we were divided them randomly into the
Randomly,
Yeah,
okay.
randomly.
So, example, if you have chosen number 1, so this particular respondent will belong to.
It was a simple random.
Okay, simple random.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That was being done by the physiotherapist.
Thank you, Dr. Sudha.
I acknowledge here my university to be myself and my co-author with me, K. Sarojini here, for the presentation. Once again, thank you all. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Excuse me, Doctor, I have one more question. Thank you for a very nice presentation. It was very interesting to hear that. I'm just wondering that it's related to the questions just now. For the control group, how you actually control that the participant is not having any exercise, at home or personal exercise. How do you control? How you know that they are not involving in any exercise related to pregnancy?
Ma'am, as in control group, a standardized antenatal care was provided. Standardized antenatal care, it means that we are not specifically giving the exercises what have been given to the experimental group. Like I have seen the walk exercises, your pelvic tilting exercises, small like dancing exercises and all. These were not provided to the control group. But the standardized antenatal care like follow-up, their diet, then the normal, how the doctor suggests them that they can just go for the walk and all. That normal standardized care was being provided for them. No any additional, the exercises were being taught to them or told to them. But after the completion of our study, we prepared some handouts, the same handouts which were there. We have been provided to them, and in turn we have told them to educate others also that this mechanism help them to ease their delivery, and it also help them to prevent from the long postpartum complications. Okay. Because we are seeing more and more deaths rates even of the cesarean sections. More face problems we have seen with many people, and they have been verbalized themselves that the post-cesarean complications are so much traumatic to them.
So you mainly control for the whoever involved in intervention, that is what they get. The control group, you're not providing anything. So you don't even check on the, their personal lifestyle, whatever they do behind the checkup, right? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we proceed to the next presenter. Can we have Miss Bibi Sultana? Okay, Miss Bibi Sultana, she will be presenting efficacy of the title is The Efficacy of Pharmacotherapy and Psychotherapies on the Health Status of Patients with Psychological Distress, a meta-analysis. The floor is yours.
The presenter need 2 minutes.
Sorry?
Presenter need 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Can we proceed to the next presenter? Is it okay? I think we can proceed to the next presenter. Okay. Okay, so can we have Mr. Subha Mereka Mitra, the next presenter. Okay, she will be presenting development of microemulsion-based drug delivery of gasoline to improve bioavailability.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shumanoreka Muthu, and today I am going to present a topic on my research, development of microemulsion-based drug delivery of diacerin to improve bioavailability. The microemulsions are basically transparent colloidal systems which are composed of two immiscible liquids. One is oil and another one is water. And diacerin is a type of drug which is already established in the treatment for rheumatoid arthritis. And because of the poor solubility and bioavailability of diacerin, so oral formulations are very difficult. So the objective of my study is to formulate a type of drug delivery system for diacerin which will improve the bioavailability as well as solubility of the drug in the human body. Because diacerin's aqueous solubility is reported to be 7 to 10 mg per ml at a pH of 7 and temperature requires 40 degrees Celsius. And it is also reported that the peak plasma concentration of diacerin is 2.2 hours and the volume of distribution in human body is 13.2 liters. So the materials and methods are from my study. We are using castor oil, SPAN 80 as surfactant, PEG 600 as co-surfactant, the drug diacerin, and the methods that we are using are pseudo-ternary phase diagram construction with the help of water titration method and microemulsion preparation. First, we check the pre-formulation studies. That is, we check the solubility. How well the diacetyl is getting soluble with the castor oil and the surfactants and co-surfactants with the help of equilibration method. And next, we perform the construction of pseudo-ternary phase diagrams. Here, we made a ratio of 1:1, 2:1, 3:1 and 4:1 of surfactant and co-surfactant, which is termed as the S mix. And to it, oil was added of a ratio of 1:9 and inverse ratio of 9:1. And after that, we kept the solutions in test tubes, in 9 different test tubes. There were 9 formulations for each of the ratios. And we added distilled water dropwise with continuous stirring until a turbidity was observed. This turbidity gives the end point. So these are the ternary phase diagrams. As you can see from all the 4 diagrams, the figure 4, it shows the colored region, which is the microemulsion region, more compared to the others. So we have considered the 4:1 ratio is mixed diagram. So here, if you see in the ternary phase diagram, the oil phase is from about 5 to 10%, and the S mix phase, that is the surfactant is to co-surfactant phase, is about 50 to 70%, and the rest is water to make it a whole of 100%. Then coming to the results, first I performed the preparation of standard curve of pure diacetyl. So this was performed by making a stock solution of 100 mg per 100 ml of diacetyl, and then from it 2 mg per ml to 10 mg per ml of the drug of the solution was taken and checked for absorbance. And we plotted a graph of concentration versus absorbance. So see in the graph, we found the R square value, which is 0.9961, which is near to 1. So we can say that our plot is linear. And we also get the equation y equals to mx. We get the value of m from here, and this equation will be further performed for the in vitro drug release study. This is the formulation table. This is the batch for the 4:1.